We honor Hazel Dukes.
Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so with that, we are going to begin our presentation with David Hochfelder. I apologize. He's the Associate Professor and Undergraduate Director of the Department of History at the University of Albany. And we are so grateful that you were able to travel to Rochester, New York for this important presentation. And then following that, we will hear from Rochester's own, our local history, who has certainly been part of the previous presentations in public hearings in Rochdale, Queens, and Buffalo, New York. So with that, let's make room and honor David Hochfelder, Associate Professor and Undergraduate Director of the Department of History at the University of Albany.
Local officials in about 1,200 American cities use these monies, $13 billion overall, to plan and implement projects that collectively displaced about 1.5 million people. Roughly 60% of those displaced were classified as non-white, mostly African American. The stated goal of the federal slum clearance program was to improve the nation's housing stock. But over time, urban renewal became a tool for local officials who sought to increase their city's tax base and to relocate residents they regarded as undesirable. Even where housing conditions were deplorable, redevelopment seldom benefited area residents. Instead,
civic action. We have free open source educational materials about the local history of civil rights in multiple places across New York State, and we encourage you to check them out and find out more about our work at resistancemapping.org. At past public hearings, we talked about the way enslavement is a central part of New York's and Rochester's history, dating all the way back to James, Duke of York, who chartered the single largest shipping company in the transatlantic slave trade. We've also talked about redlining and other government-sanctioned forms of housing discrimination that gave form to the communities we live in today.
So I'm calling you in names of three so that we can prepare, and we have Dr. LaShonda Leslie Smith, who is first, and then we have Lamika Wilson and Solomon Titus Taylor. And I apologize if I pronounce any names incorrectly just in advance. Please forgive me. But certainly when you come to the microphone, please submit your name and the organization that you're associated with one, if you'd like. But we just wanted to make sure we have that because there is a note taker that's on the call. So we have Rose Notes on the call with us taking notes. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. LaShonda Leslie Smith, and I come from a family where generational wealth was never a possibility because each generation was forced to start from a deficit. A deficit not created by personal failure, but by systemic exclusion, by redlining, as we heard this evening, by policies that strip Black families of opportunities to own homes, to build businesses, to pass down wealth. The neighborhoods that many Black Americans live in today, the ones that remain segregated, underfunded, and disproportionately poor, are not by accident. Again, we heard that today. This was not a coincidence. They were the result of intentional government-sanctioned actions that determined who had access to prosperity and who was left behind struggling to survive. For the first time in my family's history, I have been able to break that cycle. I am the first generation to send a child to college and fully support them into adulthood, rather than needing them to become a financial contributor at the age of 18 just to help make ends meet because we had more month than money. I feel honored, I feel privileged, and at times I feel middle-class guilt. Not because I didn't work hard, but because I know others who came from the exact same place as me, from the exact circumstances, never got the same chance. At Connected Communities, where I work, we are using a different model, one that treats neighborhoods as economic ecosystems, capable of breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty. We are proving that when you invest in people, and you invest in place, and you invest in economic opportunity, you do not just create equity, you create transformation. Reparations are not a handout. Reparations are a necessary correction. a moral obligation, a long overdue acknowledgement that this country and this state owe a debt to Black Americans that cannot be ignored any longer. We cannot rebuild what was stolen in places like the Greenwood District of Tulsa, Oklahoma, also known as Black Wall Street. But we can repair the harm that was done by white economic envy. We can invest in Black communities with the same intentionality with which they were dismantled. The question before us today is not whether or not reparations are deserved. The evidence is undeniable. The question is, do we have the courage to act? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Leslie Smith.
Everything that we're talking about here tonight, because I am a descendant of the Titus Africans from 1746 here in America. I am also a descendant of Bilal Muhammad, one of the first Muslims that was brought to these lands in 1803. So I am reparations here in America. And these things need to take place. We know what happened with the transatlantic slave trade. We know what happened with our people that came across these shores and helped build this nation. We know what happened. So today I stand before you, a 64-year-old man here in Rochester, New York, born and raised here in Rochester, New York. And the photo that's in my phone is my grandmother that was on one of those photos on the screen on Philander Street and during the time of the 1964 riots. I am now an elder here in the city of Rochester, with over 300 family members living here in the city of Rochester. But my voice is also that of my family members across this nation that have been displaced because of slavery, that have gone through things because of slavery, and that are standing today and have learned that because of reparations that did not come, we had to stand. And we produced lawyers, we produced councilmen, we produced teachers, educators, police officers, to include a police chief in Washington, D.C. So we stand on who we are as a people, but still yet understand, and I'm sorry for going back and forth, but this is Rochester. And if we're the second to go through this fight for reparations after the state of California, then we need to become the first to make sure that things happen for all of our people here in this country because of what took place in our lives. I am now, like I said, an elder for my family. And if we were to go back to Africa and I had to stand before my people, I would be next in line to be king. So I stand as king of my family, and I stand as a representative here of the city of Rochester. Demond Meeks, I almost raised him. So look where he is now. So we will stand together as a family here in the city of Rochester and across this nation to do what we have to do. Thank you very much. The fight is not over. The fight has just begun, and it will continue to fight on our watch. This is on our watch, and I thank you very much.
Elder Taylor, just 1 second. Can you give us your grandmother's name?
My grandmother's name was Ella Titus.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. With that, we're going to make room for Shay Herbert, Dr. Candace Lucas, and Christopher Wilson. Shay Herbert.
So, good evening, members of the New York State Reparations Commission, colleagues, and fellow New Yorkers. My name is Shay Herbert, representing the New York Civil Liberties Union's Racial Justice Center, and in partnership with New Yorkers for Reparations, which is a coalition with over 70 organizations committed to securing reparations for Black New Yorkers. As a proud Rochesterian with deep roots in this community, I stand before you not only as a resident, but as an advocate in this community. I work with an organization that ensures that the basic human needs of Black people are met. My journey here has intertwined with the lives of countless individuals, particularly our Black youth. I am a mentor at a local theater with a mission to teach our youth how to write and produce plays. I am someone who consistently shows up and have been recognized by the city of Rochester as someone who is dedicated to the solution. I am here today because to intentionally address long-standing challenges in our communities, we must start at the root of the problem. I want to bring sharp focus to a couple barriers and systemic inequalities policing, and environmental racism. The unequal systems that Black Americans have been forced to navigate are not unintended ramifications. These are the residual impacts of slavery that still greatly impact Black people in Rochester. I will begin by acknowledging the racist history and continued harmful practices of the Rochester Police Department. And most of us may know, the Rochester Police Department was originally formed as an unstructured system of volunteers acting as watchmen with the task of controlling former enslaved people and dehumanizing them, mainly with verbal and physical violence that left many recently freed Black people with added trauma. Today, Rochester is among some of the heaviest police cities across the country, and the Rochester Police Department is one of the most violent police forces in the state of New York. I was raised within one of the poorest zip codes in Rochester and have firsthand witnessed my Black uncles, friends, and community members be targeted and fall victim to excessive use of force by police, with the officer's intention being to inflict fear and uphold a sense of superiority over Black people in this city. Another prominent issue here in Rochester is the clear environmental racism that a high percentage of Black families have been affected by. Take the Cornhill neighborhood, for example, a prominently Black neighborhood that became a target for urban renewal and highway planners, and by 1972, Route 490 cut through Cornhill, ultimately demolishing nearly every home and business, exposing them to environmental toxins. People lost investments in their homes, businesses, and cultural institutions, from jazz clubs to civic clubs and community centers. They were displaced and had to close entirely. Nearly 900 families were displaced and uprooted. Black neighborhoods in Rochester are the most impacted by gross air, lead, contaminated water, and there are hardly any available green spaces in Black neighborhoods. This has an adverse effect on pollution and the property values of these homes in these neighborhoods compared to white neighborhoods. Reparations will be the start of New York taking a true accountable look and acknowledge the harm that follows the legacy of slavery, and it will be a tangible step towards prosperity for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Shay, if you had more and if you wanted to send it to the commission, you can send your testimony to the commission. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to keep it short and I'm going to keep it brief. This is going to be under 3 minutes because I can't submit things online. We all understand that reparations are important. It needs to happen. So that's not here my argument. That's not my cause. What I want to do is just talk about one particular era. As Elder Asa, you still here, was mentioning, my partner Suzanne and I have been working on the reconnecting communities and the inner loop. And we do see the fear of what Elder Asa mentioned. So we've been working with individuals like Demond Meeks, Senator, to make things happen, to make sure that the communities just north of the inner loop are not harmed, that they can remain in their homes. Maybe this reparations funds could go towards an anti-displacement fund so that those individuals who are in their home who can't afford their taxes now have a fund that helps their taxes. Yeah. Let us figure out ways that we can build housing with auxiliary dwelling units within the home so that now mom and dad are there and grandma can live downstairs. Grandma can now age in place. The children can now come into the home. This creates a stream of generational wealth in the neighborhood. So if we have the momentum and movement to do it now, I please ask you, do what's right with this reparations as they shine the light on the inner loop, being the beacon of the great thing that's happening in Rochester. Don't forget about the families that have been there and lived there right next to it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunwoody. And Mr. Dunwoody, if you have more, you please submit it to the website at reparations@reparations.newyork.gov. Thank you. Next, we have Suzanne Mayer, if you're here. If you're not here, we welcome Dan T. Butler, Ethelene Lawrence, and Elizabeth McGriff. Are those individuals still here?
I am Suzanne Mayer, but my partner just spoke for me, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for being here. So is Dan T. Butler here? All right, Reverend Dan left. Ethelene Lawrence.
Yes, my name is Ethelene Lawrence, and I'm just a
You
citizen.
can pull the mic closer, just to you a little bit, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I'm just a citizen in Rochester, lived here all my life. And I'm just, I look at the the black community, and I get very sad because I know that what happened to us was by design. And I know that the only way we gonna fix it is we as black people got to come together and make it happen. That's right. We got to do it. Because I done lived here a long time, and I'm a senior, and I haven't seen no change for us. Not through the government, local, state, or national. Haven't seen it. Reparations is due, and we will get it. Because that's by universal law, not man's law. And I would like to see things get better for us, but I don't see it coming through laws and policies of man. I do not see it. Affirmative action, DEI and all that stuff, that wasn't about nothing. It wasn't even for us. It was just language, word games. It didn't do nothing for us. And I want to tell my people, y'all, we got to get together, we got to come together and help ourselves. That's what we got to do. Right. You talking about, oh God, because I didn't write nothing down. I don't write nothing down. I speak from my heart.
Oh, thank you.
When they talk about gentrification, urban renewal, it's still going on. Still going on. Right now, elderly people have homes they want to leave to their children, but the houses are falling down because they haven't had the monies to fix them up. And then, go get a grant, go get a leg grant, go get this. The only thing the city come in there and do is outside of the house. For what? Curb appeal. That's all it is. It's about curb appeal. They ain't gonna help you with your plumbing, your electricity, your foundation. They're not gonna do none of that. Okay? Make it look good on the outside, even though the floor is falling in on the inside. Okay? And then, you know, I just got to speak the truth how I see it, and I've been seeing it for years. I'm a senior citizen, and I see it. I've seen it for years.
Thank you, Elder Ethelene Lawrence. And we want to make sure that we provide you that number at 518-473-3997.
I'm sure I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We are grateful for your testimony in all seriousness. Next, we want to make room we do have Assemblymember Meeks on the list, and I wanted to know if you were giving personal testimony or are you all set?
I'll speak.
Okay.
You've heard a number of people speak today about some of the development that's coming down. The inner loop, this $223 million project as far as filling in the inner loop and preparing it for what's to come, development. We secured $100 million from the state of New York, another $100 million from the federal government, and we're working on the additional $23 million. If we look at our community right now as it relates to gentrification or development, there's a number of development projects that are going on, and I think that we as a community have to be intentional in this space as it relates to generating wealth from these development projects. One of the first conversations that I had when we met regarding the, when I was at the table regarding the inner loop was we need funding and resources to make sure that individuals from our community have an opportunity to generate wealth. With that, we were able to secure hundreds of thousands of dollars from the federal government to help begin to train individuals from our community. We also have some development going up in our neighborhoods, some of it by way of our churches. But if we look at major development in our community, it's very seldom that you see black and brown bodies working on them. That's not on the government. Part of it is. It calls for 30%. But if it's our community, we also have to have a voice as a member of our community. I've talked to other communities across New York State. They say, brother, we don't deal with that. I said, well, how did y'all push back against it? They said, well, eventually we were able to get some agreements as it relates to the labor before it took place. But they would actually go and march onto these projects as a community and say we need to speak to we need to speak to the developers. We need to speak to whoever is spearheading this project. And they would simply tell them they're not available. They said, well, we don't know how you're going to move forward with this project unless we speak to those people and they agree that we get X amount of jobs as it relates to this development. So I'm saying to us as a community, the power of the people is far stronger than the people in power. And for far too long, we sort of lost track of that as a community. I grew up in a Baptist church. There were rules and guidelines as it relates to who walks and who speaks from the pulpit. But what I notice is a lot of our churches, if you're a politician, you get the pulpit. Somebody know what I'm talking about, but historically that just wasn't the case, and I just think that we sort of lost sight because we've been sort of bamboozled as to who the power brokers are, and the power brokers are the members of the community. So I hold a political seat, but I subscribe to servant leadership, and I have not lost sight of who I am, who I'm from, and whose I am. So I think that we got to do better in that space. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Meeks. I just want to make room for President Melendez, who's here. I did text you. I don't think you saw it, but I wanted to make an opportunity for you to make remarks if you wanted to, please.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Miguel Melendez, City Council member. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that I have my daughter with me, my 12-year-old daughter, Aaliyah, because I wanted her to experience and hear from the community as well. What I wanted to say tonight, and the reason I think this is critically important, is the state of New York can act. We know that right now the federal government will not. And it has been decades and decades, lifetimes and lifetimes, where the federal government has not acted. And this commission has an opportunity to invest in black communities across our state and to do so in a way that is meaningful. And it is my hope that the remedies that come from the community, the solutions that you're hearing tonight, that they are lifted at a state level, at a statewide level, and that we here in Rochester can help elevate those voices and create opportunities, because the federal government isn't coming to save us. It's very clear under this current administration, it's not happening. And frankly, even when Democrats have had the office, we have not been able to move. So let's be very clear that the state of New York has an opportunity. I'm very thankful for Assemblymember Meeks for his leadership in this space. And we have a lot more work to do, but I'm here for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. President Melendez, we are grateful for you. Next, I want to make sure that we call again Bruick. If I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, I apologize.
Well, again, my name is Keith Harris. I'm an artist, advocate, and educator in the community of Rochester. In regards to reparations, the question is, it definitely needs to happen, but why? All of the, and I will say that my mother and my father came from the South, from the area of Memphis and Mississippi. I was born and raised in the great state of New York, and I love New York. But there has to be changes. One of the key things is that the wealth of nations globally was built on slavery. The transatlantic slave trade impacted everything. That means that everybody got rich except those who dug the ditch, who built the Capitol, who built the White House. These are black people who dug up cities literally and figuratively by hand. Manhattan was done when it was under the Dutch, when it was New Amsterdam. They dug up Manhattan. The cobblestone streets and all that is still there. All of the legacy is still there. The banks in America, if we go all the big banks, Chase, they can trace their roots back to slavery. The bill of sale, they were trading stock. The stock market was where they traded slaves. This is all, so all this began with slavery, and it built up the wealth of the world. So doing right, America can't go forward until they address the concerns of black people. They can't go forward until we get the debt that's owed. The reason being, look what happened during the Civil War. They tried to ignore us, said, no, we're going to keep them slaves. No, we're not going to. And it almost destroyed America. It brought America to its knees. They almost wiped us out. Look at, brother against brother over black people. America hasn't learned. You know, they say if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Then you go to the 60s with Dr. King and Malcolm and the Panthers and people marching. America was almost brought to its knees. And again, they were showed mercy because they said, hey, if you don't do right by black people, there will be consequences and actions. There will be consequences and repercussions. So now we're coming into the new age, and there has to be a change. Right now, black people are calling out all around the world. It's time to understand that black people have had enough. It is time. America can't move forward until they pay the debt. They did it with the Jews. The Jews, they gave them reparations, they gave them a country and everything. And then they said, oh, well, we don't know where you're going to put your country. They first went to Africa. They was going to put Israel in Africa. You people don't know this. But they said, okay, well, so this is what they can do. If they can do it for one group, they can do it for us. And now is the time for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any brief comments from the commissioners before we close tonight? Commissioner Daniels.
You must have saw me taking notes.
Yes, we did.
I wanted to get my thoughts together, and let me just say that to you, Madam Chair, and to the Rochester community, what an amazing, informative, inspiring, information-packed hearing. It was so, just so powerful. I just wanted to say that off the bat. And just quickly, just make a couple of comments. Number one, to the brother who's talked about education, he's correct. The New York Commissioner of Education can direct them towards I think it's the curriculum of inclusion. Dr. Shango Blake, you can Google Dr. Shango Blake. He is called a hip-hop principal. It would be good. You can find information about the curriculum from him. Also want to just indicate that on the funding question, there are states that are looking at funding reparations by way of tax on marijuana. That is exactly how the Evanston Reparation Initiative started. It's now being supplemented by additional funds, but it got started by a tax on legalized marijuana. Other thing, I just wanted to acknowledge the sister of Native ancestry and relationship to the 5 civilized tribes in Oklahoma, and that the injustices that have been done there and the lack of reparatory justice. But be aware that there are people who are looking at that, and there's some lawsuits being filed, but I know that we in the National African American Reparations Commission are looking at that as well. And just finally, I wanted to point out that unbeknownst to a lot of people, in the transportation department, under one of the bills passed by Biden, there was actually funding. There was a significant funding that was put in there to repair communities that have been displaced by urban renewal. And I think one of the announcements was made in Milwaukee, and I think there's a real case it may be in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where a whole community was just wiped out by a freeway, and they went in and invested significant dollars to rebuild those communities. So the whole idea of rebuilding these communities, as has been talked about, is not beyond the pale. And indeed, it was a part, though unfortunately in a stealth way, of one of the Biden bills that got passed. So again, congratulations to everyone in Rochester for just an amazing, powerful forum hearing that will drive our work forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels. I'll make room for our Vice Chair, Commissioner Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm so sorry. Yes, it was an excellent public hearing from the presentations by Dr. Felder and our history, and then the testimonies of the public who are rooted and have been rooted in Rochester for decades, and even the nation. And piggybacking off of what Dr. Daniels said to the sister whose roots go back to Alabama, she and I share that similar tale of for me, my great grandmother on my maternal paternal side was considered a full Native American, but of course, like she said about her relative, had to deny that part of her because of what transpired during the Trail of Tears in Alabama and other states. So this was really rich in terms of learning more about the atrocities visited upon us in yet another pocket of New York State, let alone the nation. And so while some may grow frustrated at the speed at which we're working, we are really in tune to what we're learning, and I look forward to the reports that will be gathered, the information that will be galvanized from all of these testimonies, because I want you all to know as the public that each and every one of your statements are valuable to the work that we have been charged with doing. And I am sure that my 8 colleagues and I will do our very best to present, each and every comment. Nothing will be ignored because we don't have the luxury to ignore anybody's testimony. And so I'm very grateful for the learning that was shared tonight and the learning that I received. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to make room for Commissioner Brown Robinson.
So yes, this was a phenomenal, I don't even have words for what a packed informational session this was. And kudos to the Rochester community, where I lived for a short while. They were phenomenal. Thank you for turning out, community, and giving us some useful, impactful, and food for thought comments. And that we will try our best to do everything within our power. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to make room for Commissioner Tarrant Reed.
Thank you, Rochester. And I want to send greetings to Brother Bob Winstead, whom I've worked with down in Westchester County on a variety of African American history and culture projects. Every public hearing brings new information, new emphasis to the harms that have occurred because of enslavement, the institution. Redlining, which was ushered in by Robert Moses's fever dream to have highways go across America and erase the Black communities, destabilizing our communities and robbing us of Black wealth. This is a story that we are going to hear across New York State and across America. This is all incredibly valuable for us to be able to include in our report, to bear witness and gather evidence as to the harms that have occurred. So I thank you, Rochester. I thank you, Reparations Commission, for arranging this incredibly successful event. Thank you, Chair Hawkins. Thank you, Commissioner Host, for hosting in person.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we'll have Commissioner Jones Austin.
Finding the unmute button. I have greatly appreciated all that I've heard this evening. And let me just say, including the challenges that were made to us as a commission, and in some instances, the centering on some of the legal issues that we have to be ever mindful of as we progress with this work. And so I, like my fellow commissioners, am deeply appreciative of the time we've had together this evening. And I think I can speak for our chair. She'll probably say it herself, but all of the points that have been made this evening will be taken into consideration. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. I'm honored to sit next to Commissioner Hogues this entire business meeting and public hearing, and I just want to thank you for your support and make room for you.
Yeah, once again, I just want to thank the community of Rochester for coming out and educating and being so passionate about this topic. And thank you. I took so many notes, and so thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, commissioners, for your partnership in this work. And we certainly have a lot of work to do, but this was an inspiring session today. So I want to thank my city that I call home, Rochester, New York, for showing up.
Commissioner,
And
we forgot Lori Daniel Favors,
oh,
Commissioner.
yes. Okay, wait, before I give Rochester its accolades. Commissioner Lori Daniel Favors, are you there? We can't see you on the screen.
I will not stand between you and the accolades for the beautiful people of Rochester. This has been a very enlightening session, and I am just grateful for those who thought it not robbery to spend time informing us as to your vision for reparations and assessment as to the harm that's been caused.
Thank you. Now we see you. Now we see you, yes. And thank you all for just dealing with the technical difficulties. But let me go back to Rochester and just saying how proud I am to represent this city of Rochester, and how proud I am that you all showed up and came prepared to share, and especially having our government staff in the building with us to share our very thoughtful solutions for what could be, what could possibly be. So like my colleagues have shared, we are grateful for what we've heard and what we learned. We thank our presenters that all showed up. We're thankful that you all honored how we would communicate, and you did that. I also want to thank the commissionary for their food, their vendors. We had House of Wax with us. We had great food that was here. And I want to thank everyone who helped with putting this together. This was certainly a joint effort, and we're grateful for this. I'm grateful for this city of Rochester, and I'm honored that this commission would allow me to serve in this capacity as chair and trusting me with this great opportunity. So I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and being with us. We look forward to seeing you in April in the Bronx, in the Boogie Down Bronx, and we look forward to sharing. We heard your comments. We are working on getting those schedules up. It is certainly challenging making it all happen like we've done today. We've had 2 hearings within 2 weeks from each other, actually, and we're trying to push forward, and we thank you. I want to thank our executive director, Dr. McKinney Chisholm Straker. Let's give her a round of applause. She's only been with us for a short time, and she has moved fast and forward, and so we're grateful for her leadership. Thank you to everyone for being here tonight, and thank you for all those that help. I see Stuart Mitchell is still here. Thank you, Stuart, for your support, and grateful for everyone. You can reach out to the commission at ny.gov/reparations, or you can call in, or you can email your testimony to the commission. This public hearing is now adjourned. Thank you for attending.